The invitation to Ryan's promotion celebration arrived with a handwritten note that perfectly captured his condescending attitude. Alex, you're welcome to attend my VP party if you can take time off from whatever it is you're doing these days. Try to dress appropriately. Ryan. I stared at the cream-colored cardstock announcing his elevation to Vice President of Operations at TechFlow Solutions. After 12 years at the same company, Ryan had finally climbed high enough to feel superior about his traditional career path compared to my unconventional journey. The party was held at the Meridian Club, downtown's most prestigious venue, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Ryan had spared no expense celebrating what he considered validation of his life choices versus mine. Alex. Ryan appeared at my side wearing a custom suit that screamed corporate success. He was surrounded by colleagues from TechFlow, all eager to congratulate him on reaching the executive level. I wasn't sure you'd show up. Don't you have some startup meeting in a coffee shop tonight? His colleagues laughed politely. They'd heard Ryan's stories about his dropout brother who'd never held a real job since leaving MIT in junior year to pursue what everyone considered a foolish entrepreneurial fantasy. Congratulations on the promotion, I said, accepting a champagne flute from a passing server. Thank you. You know, Alex, it's funny, here I am celebrating 12 years of steady career progression, building something meaningful, while you're still jumping from project to project like some kind of professional wanderer. What Ryan didn't know was that I'd been tracking TechFlow Solutions for 8 months, not out of brotherly interest, but because the company had become an acquisition target for Apex Ventures, the private equity firm where I served as managing partner. At least I finished college, Ryan announced to his gathered colleagues, raising his champagne glass. Sometimes traditional paths actually work better than trying to reinvent the wheel. His audience nodded approvingly. These were people who valued credentials, corporate hierarchies, and predictable advancement tracks. My decision to leave MIT and pursue venture capital had always baffled them. Speaking of traditional paths, I said, checking my phone where a message waited from my acquisition team, how's TechFlow's performance been lately? Excellent, Ryan beamed. We just posted our best quarter in company history. 18% growth, expanding into 3 new markets. That's what steady leadership accomplishes. I nodded thoughtfully, thinking about the due diligence reports that had made TechFlow such an attractive target. Ryan's excellent performance had indeed caught the attention of investors, just not in the way he imagined. My phone buzzed with another message. Papers signed. Announcement goes live in 30 minutes. Time to show Ryan what dropping out of college had actually accomplished. You know what your problem is, Alex? Ryan continued, addressing both me and his assembled colleagues. You never learned the value of commitment. Building a career requires staying power, dedication to an organization's mission. His TechFlow colleagues nodded sagely. These were people who'd climbed corporate ladders methodically, accumulating titles and responsibilities over years of careful advancement. Ryan's absolutely right, added Sarah Chin, TechFlow's chief financial officer. There's something to be said for institutional loyalty. Alex, what's the longest you've ever worked anywhere? Hard to say, I replied honestly. My work tends to be project-based. More knowing looks. Project-based work was code for can't hold a steady job, in their corporate vocabulary. That's exactly what I mean, Ryan said triumphantly. While I've been building relationships, developing expertise, proving my value to TechFlow's leadership, you've been floating from one consulting gig to another. If only they knew that my consulting gigs involved acquiring and restructuring companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Speaking of TechFlow's leadership, I said, how's the board of directors these days? Ryan's chest puffed with pride. Exceptional. We've got some of the most respected names in technology and finance. Real visionaries who understand long-term value creation. Including some private equity representation? Actually, yes. We brought on some strategic investors last year. Very prestigious firms. Ryan's voice carried the tone of someone who believed he was part of something important. Why do you ask? Just curious about the company's direction, I said, checking my watch. 22 minutes until the announcement. Sarah Chin leaned forward with obvious interest. Alex, are you thinking about getting into corporate work? Maybe Ryan could put in a word. That's generous, I interrupted, but I'm quite satisfied with my current position. Which is? Ryan asked with barely concealed smugness. Managing partner at Apex Ventures, I said simply. The conversation paused. Several of Ryan's colleagues exchanged glances, recognizing the name but unsure of the implications. Apex Ventures, Sarah repeated slowly. That's one of the private equity firms on our board. The largest stakeholder actually, I confirmed. We've been very impressed with TechFlow's performance. Ryan's smile began to waver. Alex, what are you saying? I'm saying your promotion celebration is about to become much more interesting. My phone lit up with a push notification from the Wall Street Journal. Breaking. Apex Ventures completes $2.3 billion acquisition of TechFlow Solutions. The party was about to take a very different direction. What's that notification? Ryan asked, noticing the change in my expression as I read the breaking news alert. I turned my phone toward him, showing the Wall Street Journal headline that had just appeared. Apex Ventures completes $2.3 billion acquisition of TechFlow Solutions in all-cash deal. The color drained from Ryan's face as he processed what he was reading. Around us, other guests were checking their phones, their own news alerts beginning to buzz with the same announcement. Alex, Ryan's voice was hoarse. This is some kind of mistake, right? Apex Ventures is just an investor in TechFlow. Apex Ventures owns TechFlow, I corrected gently. As of approximately 10 minutes ago, we completed the acquisition of all outstanding shares. Sarah Chin grabbed her phone with shaking hands. But this is Ryan's promotion party. We just made him vice president. Vice president of a company that no longer exists as an independent entity, I explained. TechFlow is now a wholly owned subsidiary of Apex Ventures, subject to immediate operational restructuring. The room had gone silent except for the sound of multiple phones buzzing as the financial news spread across every major outlet. Alex, Ryan stammered, you said you were a managing partner. What does that mean exactly? It means I led the acquisition team that's been evaluating TechFlow for the past 8 months. It means I signed the purchase agreement that eliminated your company's independence. It means your promotion celebration just became your transition meeting. Ryan's colleagues were staring at their phones in horror, reading articles that detailed Apex's reputation for aggressive corporate restructuring and workforce optimization. The failed Dropout, I continued, just purchased the company where you've spent 12 years building your career. But you left college, Ryan whispered. You never finished your degree. I left MIT to join a venture capital firm that offered me a partnership track, I corrected. 3 years later I was managing my first $100 million deal. 5 years after that I co-founded Apex Ventures. Sarah Chin looked up from her phone, her face pale. Alex, the articles are saying Apex typically reduces workforce by 40 to 60% after acquisitions. Every acquisition is different, I said diplomatically. Though I will say that TechFlow's operational structure shows significant redundancy in middle management positions. Ryan sank into the nearest chair, still staring at his phone. You bought my company. You actually bought my company. I bought an underperforming assets portfolio that happened to include your employment contract, I clarified. Though that contract will obviously be subject to review during the integration process. The promotion party had indeed become something else entirely. The remainder of Ryan's promotion celebration devolved into an impromptu crisis management session, with TechFlow employees frantically calling family members and updating LinkedIn profiles while I fielded congratulatory messages from other private equity partners. Alex, we need to talk, Ryan said quietly, approaching me as the crowd began to thin. What happens now? Now you learn what happens when private equity acquires a company with bloated management structures and inefficient operations, I replied, checking my phone as integration timelines arrived from my team. Are you going to fire me? I'm going to evaluate whether your role adds sufficient value to justify its continuation under new ownership, I said honestly. Vice President of Operations at a mid-sized software company doesn't automatically translate to strategic value in a portfolio optimization scenario. Sarah Chin had been listening to our conversation. Alex, what about the rest of us? Sarah, your financial background could be valuable during the integration. Most others. I shrugged diplomatically. Apex typically retains core talent and optimizes everything else. Ryan's voice was small when he spoke again. I spent 12 years building this career. You spent 12 years climbing a ladder that was leaning against a building I was planning to demolish, I corrected. That's the difference between building something and just advancing within something. 3 weeks later, Ryan called me from his new position as operations manager at a regional consulting firm, a 60% salary reduction and 3 management levels below his former title. TechFlow's integration had eliminated 127 positions, including most of the executive structure Ryan had worked so hard to join. I understand now why you left college, he said. You saw an opportunity that traditional paths couldn't provide. I saw that the most valuable education happens outside classrooms, I replied. While you were following preset curricula, I was learning how markets actually work. The family learned that success comes in many forms, and that sometimes the smartest decision is abandoning the path everyone expects you to follow. Ryan's promotion party became legendary in our industry, not as a celebration of corporate advancement, but as a case study in how quickly traditional career security can disappear when you're working for someone else's vision. Sometimes the biggest risk is staying exactly where everyone thinks you belong. College dropouts, it turns out, sometimes drop out to buy colleges,